I was worried
All
for
right,
a
good
minute.
afternoon, everyone. This is Terry Kimker, and I am Chair of the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission. And welcome to our meeting of February 22, 2021. The Heritage Preservation Commission reviews applications for projects at heritage sites or within the heritage districts of the City of St. Paul. And the Commission also serves as an advisory body to the Mayor and the City Council on municipal heritage preservation matters for the city. All documentation used for this meeting is available on the Commission website at www.stpaul.gov/HPC, and no new documentation will be discussed or recognized during this meeting. During the meeting, please mute your microphones except when recognized by the chair to speak. And after being recognized by the chair, commissioners and staff will need to state their name before speaking, and everyone else needs to state their name and address before speaking. All deliberation and voting will be done via a roll call conducted by the chair, and staff will be monitoring microphones and muting participants as needed. So with that, I will call the attendance. Commissioner George? Commissioner Bazat.
I'm here. Thank you.
Hello. Commissioner, I know Commissioner Douglas is not going to be with us today. Commissioner Lubke? Commissioner Wagner?
Commissioner Wagner could not make the meeting either.
Okay, thanks, George. Commissioner Peroka?
Present.
Hello. Commissioner Nelson?
I'm here.
Hello. And Commissioner McDonald, you're with us, right?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion and a second for adoption of the agenda?
This is Commissioner Bazat, so move.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson, second.
Thank you. Anybody, well, let's see, Commissioner George, we don't have him here yet, right? Okay. Commissioner Bazat, do you in favor of that motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Lupke, you're not with us. Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner Peroka.
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, the motion, the agenda is adopted. Are there any conflicts of interest today? Commissioner Bazat.
Nope.
Commissioner Peroka.
No conflict of interest.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson.
No.
Commissioner McDonald.
No.
And none for me either. Okay, and then we have
I'm sorry, Chair. Can you ask for Commissioner George and Commissioner Lupke again? Some folks just joined the meeting.
Okay. Commissioner George, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hello.
Hello?
Do you have any conflicts of interest?
No.
Commissioner Lubke. Still no Commissioner Lubke. Okay, thanks. Okay, so then our first item of business is the minutes for the December 28th, 2020 Executive Committee meeting and the minutes for our February 8th, 2021 2021 meeting. Are there any major edits needed on the submitted minutes? Commissioner George?
Yes. I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is whether there's any major edits needed on the submitted minutes for the Executive Committee meeting and the February 8, 2021 meeting.
Not that I know, no.
Thanks. Commissioner Bazat?
No, none that I see.
Thank you. Commissioner Peroka?
No.
Commissioner Nelson?
Well, I wouldn't know about the executive committee, would I, since I wasn't there, but I have no comment.
Okay. And Commissioner McDonald?
No.
And if the minutes are true and correct, is there a motion for approval of the minutes?
This is Commissioner George, so moved.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bazat, second.
Thank you. And on that motion, Commissioner George,
Yes.
for the motion?
I believe that was his vote.
Commissioner George,
Yes.
you're in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Bazat,
Yes.
Commissioner Peroka.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson
Yes.
and Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, it's kind of tedious, I know, to keep going through this roll call over and again, but it just is, it keeps our records clearer when we're not doing this in person. So that's why we're doing that. Okay. Okay, so the minutes are approved. And then our first item of business, our only item of business today, is the infill construction at 300 Ryan. And who is presenting on behalf of staff for that one?
That would be me, George. George Gauze, HP staff, 300 Ryan. It's in the Irving Park Heritage Preservation District. This currently is a vacant lot. I gave some background on the previous demolition in the staff report. I'm happy to answer any other questions if folks need to know anything more about that. At the pre-application meeting for this project was held on December 14th, 2020. The commissioner comments were, I like the design and the bay window. This is a modest neighborhood. Design should focus on being modest infill. This design may be overwhelming for new infill construction. Detailing could be toned down. This is a new building in an historic district. Focus on scale, massing materials to fit into that context. Simplify this into an elegant design. So the proposal is for a new single-family residential structure with attached garage proposed for the vacant lot. Height would be approximately 32 feet 10 inches, width 29 feet 10 inches, square footage 2,742 square feet. Siding material would be cement fiberboard 4-inch exposure. Window material would be Fibrix composite, and roofing material would be asphalt shingles. And we're doing something a little different with our staff reports. We're kind of asking 3 questions, similar to what if an appeal goes to City Council, what City Council would be asking. So we thought maybe it'd be a good idea to incorporate that into staff reports. So we're answering those questions right now. And so question number 1 does the project conform with St. Paul Legislative Code Chapter 74 standards? The developer has taken comments from the HPC pre-app meeting and the neighborhood meeting and has focused on the specific architectural characteristics of the area while keeping the design distinguishable from other historic structures. As designed, the structure will be approximately 3 feet taller than the neighboring structure. The height will conform to the height variables of Irving Park, though, which is a mix of heights, while staying in the context of what's found on Ryan Avenue. The nested gable roof is not seen in Irving Park, but it does differentiate this as new construction, as stated in Secretary of Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation number 9. The design does meet Legislative Code Chapter 74 standards, except for that roof shape. Question 2, was the public informed about the HPC application, and was there any participation? Notice letters were sent out to property owners within 100 feet of the property on February 8th, 2021, which gave a description and a map of the project and gave the website that had all the plans of the project. Then the HP staff organized a meeting between the developer and the residents on January 21st, 2021. The meeting recording is available on the City of St. Paul YouTube site under the HPC playlist tab. I have a few of those comments. The neighbor comments were that they were okay generally with the roof style. They did want to see a streetscape to see how this fits in to the neighborhood with other neighboring houses, and that was provided in the packet the developer submitted. There were comments that the building seemed to be too tall. It is 3 feet higher than neighboring structures on Ryan Avenue. There were questions about if this new infill would overwhelm the street. There was questions and comments about details not matching what we see on structures along Ryan Avenue, which the structures on Ryan are very simple structures. In the context the builder should be looking at is the new infill on Ryan Avenue, not all of Irving Park. The developer comments were that the details were based on Ryan Avenue and on the corner house at Ryan and Irving Park. That no variances would be needed for this infill. There was several questions about variances and setbacks and height restrictions and things like that. A lot of those are zoning issues. That's not a consideration for the HPC. He answered questions that the windows would be the Fibrix composite, double hung. He did remove the arch windows that were found and the arches found at the front door and the windows at the front porch, which were not common for the area. And there was a lot of comments about exposure of the foundation. The foundation is only about 6 inches. We have 18 to 20 inches in the area. If he had more exposed foundation, the house would be taller. So, and then question number 3, does the project adversely affect the program for preservation and architectural control under code section 73.06E? Staff feels it does not. Generally, the infill design does conform to legislative code standards. The roof is different from what's found in the district, but it also could be said that it differentiates this design from historic contributing properties nearby. Materials conform to what we see in the district. Cement fiberboard and Fibrix composite windows perform visually similar to wood products. The building will be 3 feet taller than any other structure on Ryan Avenue, but the height is still within range of what we see in Irving Park, which has some very large houses. And 3 feet on a hipped roof should be imperceivable to passersby. It's going to be sloping away from the street. And only to a peak, so it shouldn't be something so overwhelming that you could tell. Foundation height, repeatedly questioned. If the foundation gets higher, the structure would get higher. And Irving Park guidelines do not address foundation height as a design consideration for the HPC. So neighbors asked a lot of questions about setbacks and coverage, which I already said. That's more zoning. If a variance is needed at some point, then there would be a separate BZA meeting that would handle that. Neighbors would get notice, and there would be another meeting that they could speak at. So based on the draft resolution findings and the 11 conditions, staff is recommending approval of the construction of the new single-family residential structure with attached garage at 300 Ryan Avenue. We do have a suggested motion. If the commission decides they do not want to go with the staff recommendation, then we will need to have finding number 2 changed, and we will have to either eliminate conditions 1 through 11 or add new conditions in. So Are there questions?
This is Commissioner Kimker. I'll just run through the roll to see if anybody has questions for George. Commissioner George.
I have no questions at this time. It was quite thoroughly discussed in the pre-application.
Thank you. Commissioner Bazat.
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Peroka.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, I have some questions. George, first of all, I really approve of the new format of the staff report. Much better. At our last meeting, and I see among the neighbors, there was discussion about, I suppose, what you might call the overall context of this. This house is this design is a lot more elaborate, so to speak, than the other ones on Ryan Avenue. But it looks to me like under the ordinance, the proper context is not Ryan Avenue, it's the Urban Park District. And do I have that right?
Yes. I mean, typically when we look at new infill construction, we want to make sure we relate to the surrounding structures, that we wouldn't want to overwhelm the houses to either side of this property. But we do want to make sure that the context that we're looking at, especially with a small district like Irving Park, we want to make sure that we're considering the whole of that district, which does have some elaborate houses in it. They're not right next to this one though. So we also have a lot of new infill construction across the street, and then the I guess the condos now on the other side. So, but if you took the Four Paws house, I mean that's a pretty elaborate house, high style structure. So yes.
Right, and the corner house that the developers make specific reference to.
Right.
So that leads to, I think, maybe just one more question, maybe two. But this developer, I believe, owns the next two lots to the south also, right?
Right.
And he said some things last time about, kind of ambitious plans for those. And so when we get to this concern raised by neighbors about overwhelming, we have on Ryan mostly simple houses. Then we have this one that's more elaborate. Approval of this design, and truly I like the design, but does that set a precedent for, okay, then the next one can be elaborate also, and the next one? Because they might very well fit the entire context of the Urban Park neighborhood, but not Ryan Avenue.
I mean that's a question for the commission to wrangle. You have half of Ryan Avenue is new construction. That if someone bought those properties and said I want to demolish those and build new, that we would have we wouldn't be able to stop a demolition of non-contributing structures. Mm-hmm. It's pretty clear that we would allow that, and we get to review the new construction. So, I mean, theoretically, they could be looking at quite a few lots of new houses in the district. So that's the question. I mean, is this structure going to be so overwhelming that it's going to start a trend away from the context and character of Irving Park, or is this okay and it still is within that context enough that it's not going to be that much of a damage? The commission does get to review the next two properties, so maybe the commissioners want to talk about this in context of those two lots, which will be built on. And I think, and Tony O'Malley is going to discuss for his application, and maybe he would want to address that of how we get these all relating to the whole neighborhood. So
Yeah, well, you take my meaning exactly. Just one more question. I see in the comments from various people, including from Mr. Schwichtenberg, mention of chimney, and he wants a chimney cap. I don't see a chimney. Am I missing something?
right, that's so we do have testimony from Kurt Schwintenberg. He was concerned about several things, and I sent that testimony out to everyone early, so you could read the letter. It was quite lengthy. That and foundation height really are not called out in Chapter 74 guidelines. So we don't really have anything that says you have to have a chimney. We don't have anything that says you have to have a foundation of a certain height. It's I don't know that a chimney, although a trained eye may look and say there's no chimney, I don't know that the casual passerby is going to see that as a problem with the design.
I can't see it at all. But okay,
right.
that's very helpful, George. Thank you.
Commissioner McDonald, do you have any questions for George?
Yes, I do. Hi, George.
Hi, Stuart.
I'm a little torn on this one. When the staff reviews infill properties, at least to my mind, the overwhelming issue is compatibility with the district in terms of scale and rhythm and things like that rather than detail. This particular building I've been looking at for a while now, and it almost smacks of being like a replica building. It's not obviously, but it looks like someone is trying to create a faux historic building. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't be looking at more of a simpler edifice. It could be very simple, like the avenue it's on, or a little more complex, like Irving Park as a whole. But the detailing, like medallions on the cornice or brackets, whatever is there, things like that, strike me as being a little bit over the top. Where do we draw the line between historicism versus compatibility, I guess, is the question I have.
Right, and this, I'll channel Commissioner Wagner a little bit here, because if he was here, he would say something about how our guidelines really kind of channel everything into this style of architecture, because we have guidelines on material of foundation, we have guidelines on the reveal of the siding, the style of windows, the type of roofs. I mean, when you start to put the potato head together, I had an architecture professor, he always called it potato head architecture. When you start to put all this together, you kind of almost always come up with that form. When you start to look at the height and the width and materials of a neighborhood, you almost kind of always have to come into that. And then we have to judge that gray area of, should this be extremely simple house, where to allow the historic structures to be vibrant and out, or should this try to match in its own way? It's a very interesting design issue. Some places say, okay, we want you to fit in. We want our districts to be vibrant all across, both new and old architecture. And like Nashville, Tennessee requires date stones to be put into properties so that we can tell, hey, this is very clearly from this date. Some places they do. Denver is very strict on no detail. The houses need to be very simple. You know, double hungs, 1/1, simple doors. You know, simple materials. So it's an interesting question. I guess when I think of Irvine Park, sorry, I grew up in Irving Park, so it gets very difficult for me sometimes not to pronounce the G. But I always think about the fountain and the park itself and the structures along at least 3/4 of it. They're high style. I mean, they're pretty elaborate. You know, we have one with the Widow's Walk. We have a couple others that have a lot of detailing on it. And you know, the neighborhood is very proud of their neighborhood, and they should be, because it's a gorgeous place. But I also agree with both the neighbors, Kurt and Ken, that this building's going to really, they're the ones that are going to live with it every day. It's a little more fussy and designed than what their properties are. Not that their properties are bad in any way, but they are a simpler form of architecture. So does the commission say we want to step back and we want this to be much simpler than what it is, or are we okay with it being a little bit having some details, and you know, like the bay and some of the filigree on the porch? I mean, maybe it is a tough thing. You're right. We look at the two areas on our worksheet. One is what's happening next door, and then we look at what's happening in the context of the area. So.
Just a couple more things in that same context. You could have fancy contemporary detailing as opposed to historical fancy detailing,
right,
to achieve a similar effect. Another thing that comes to mind with me always is paint colors. It's my understanding we don't have jurisdiction over paint colors.
We only
Is
have
that correct?
We only have jurisdiction if it's a material color.
Okay, so if we're talking paint,
we do not.
So these new buildings could be day glow orange or neon green, correct?
Orange and blue. That's what I like to see. Yep.
Yeah. So if an applicant wants to paint it whatever color in the spectrum they want, that's okay?
That is okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have no permitting. We have no permitting obligation over paint colors. So.
Well, that certainly would make them different.
It would.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to run through the roll just one more time to make sure that we don't have any new questions that have come up. Commissioner George?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Bazat?
Just a comment that I said I have no questions at this time because the comments I would make, I was holding for a discussion, and they echo the concerns that have been raised by my fellow commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Perotka?
Yes, I have a question for staff. George, you were mentioning that the 3 feet height is higher than any of the other homes on the block, and that's I can visualize that. But it's not that much of a variation compared to the historic district as a whole, correct?
Correct.
There's different shapes and forms of massing, different roof detailings, and different heights.
Right. We have a couple of structures in the area that we estimate go almost 50 feet in height. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson, any further questions?
Nothing more.
And Commissioner McDonald?
No further questions.
Commissioner Bazat, I see you have your hand still up. Is that just, okay. All right.
Apologies.
No problem. Just to make sure there's no further questions from anybody for staff. With that, then I'll ask if there's a representative of the applicant here to make a presentation on the application.
Yeah, we're Tony O'Malley and John Sharkey are here.
Welcome.
So a couple of things we just want to touch on. I know we've answered a lot of questions for you guys, the meetings we've had, and then George and I had a meeting with the neighborhood. You know, I completely understand what everyone's saying as far as fitting into the neighborhood, and we wanted to obviously fit into the historical part of Irvine. We've taken the information and feedback from everyone and have made changes during this process. So, you know, we changed the grids on the windows, we changed the door, and we also changed the window trim around the home to kind of bring it down a little bit so it wasn't architectural. The other thing I wanted to touch on too is it's not, from our calculations that we have, it's not 3 feet taller than the other homes. It's about, what's that, Tony?
Around 2 feet.
It's right around 2 feet.
It's a little bit under. We're about 32 foot 3 inches off our calculations. And then the house to the south of ours is 30 foot 6. So
not that it's kind of splitting hairs, but I mean, just if someone did have, I know height's been an issue with a couple of the neighbors and stuff. So it looks like we're right around the 2 feet, 3 feet. But, you know, we put a lot of work into this, and, you know, our plan is with the other ones is to, you know, we want to work with everyone and, you know, listen to the neighbors, and we have done that. And we're certainly not trying to, you know, our goal from the beginning is that, you know, we've done a lot of work in St. Paul as we looked at the historical part of Irvine Park. We didn't look at just Ryan Avenue. And that's why maybe we have a little bit more detail, is that we're trying to, you know, fit into the whole Irvine Park instead of just Ryan Avenue. That's probably about all we have to add. We're here for questions, and feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. So then, with respect to questions for Mr. O'Malley and Mr. Sharkey, Commissioner George.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Bazat?
I have no questions for the applicant.
Commissioner Peroka?
Yes, thank you. I have a question. What part of the detailing and the design of this building do you think makes it especially branded for this historic district, that makes it fit in uniquely with this district? What would you like to highlight about this design that fits in with Irvine Park?
yeah, I think, and thanks for the question. I think, you know, our porch on the front is really common throughout the neighborhood and the district. Our porch style actually matches our neighbors with our balusters, our straight square balusters. It kind of is a fitting theme throughout the neighborhood. We also have a vent on our gable. That's also a common feature. And we thought our bay window would tie in nicely to the corner house on 35 Irvine, as it's one house over from ours. So.
Okay, thank you. And I also have another question. You said that you did speak with the neighbors and have a dialogue and a conversation. Was it a lot of neighbors, just a few? Was it brief conversations or over a period of time?
So yeah, I'll let George jump in on this too. But when I bought the property, I set up a neighborhood meeting with probably 7 or 8 of the neighbors, and you know, we all had coffee, introduced myself and explained what my plan was, showed them some concept renderings, and everyone seemed really excited about it. The last meeting, George, you might be able to jump in here and say how many people joined.
Outside of staff and applicants, there were 14 unique people on the call. I don't know how many of those were in the same household or not, but at least 14 different folks were on the call. The meeting, Teams meeting.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Okay, Commissioner Nelson, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do, one or two. First of all, did you all, have you read Kurt, it's not Kurt, is it? Mr. Schwichtenberg's long letter?
We have not.
Aha, George, I wonder, or someone, can you put the last page of it up on the screen? Because I want to ask about the 4 recommendations that he made. Yeah, it is Kurt Schwichtenberg. Well, while you're doing that, I'll just describe. One was about the masonry pedestal, which I gather I think we've resolved that. His second recommendation was change the front gable roof to a hip and allow bay to end under the continuous soffit produced there. Oh, now you can see it. So if you guys would just take a minute and look at those and just tell me your reaction to those.
Yep. So yeah, I guess we number 4 we've talked about the chimney, right? Neither neighbor has a chimney. Number 1, to change up the columns. I think we've done that once already. If someone has a better idea of what they want, they can certainly produce something, and we're more than happy to work with people. The front gable to hip, I know, I don't really love that idea. Both neighbors don't have that. Their front gable certainly is not hipped. Neighbors flanking the home. And see number 1, masonry pedestal list across the front. I think we talked about that also. So, this is his opinion, and I respect that, but I would like to stand by our design.
Okay, that's helpful. It sounds like maybe number 3, the columns thing is, possibly in play. So I'm going to continue. I don't really have a question now, but you guys have obviously heard, and you've heard us, a certain amount of discomfort from me, from others, and from the neighbors about, what may happen after this, because this house is kind of dressier than the others. And of course, we only have jurisdiction over the design that's in front of us, not what might come sometime in the future. So it's just, my urging to be aware that, there is a little bit of discomfort about that. And I hope you will be really careful with the coming designs to keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely, we will. We've worked quite a bit in St. Paul. We just finished a home on Summit Avenue, so we're very familiar with working with everyone in St. Paul and the neighbors and the HPC, and we take everything you guys say and try to work with you guys, not against you. And our future designs, we will certainly take that into account.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Commissioner McDonald, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I just have one. Good afternoon. The whole issue of the pedestal for the building, I'm not too concerned about it, except the overall proportion of the bay window block. It seems very tall from the bottom of the windows down to earth. And it looks like it could use some improvement if, for instance, and I know I'm not supposed to be designing, but I can't help myself. If you took a common horizontal line that coincided with the porch and had that as a feature on the bay and had a shorter panel, that would rather dramatically change those proportions. And I don't know how many different variants you looked at that bottom area for the bay, but it'd be interesting to just readdress that a little bit.
Yes, we'll take that into consideration.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I'm just going to run through the roll one more time just to make sure we have everybody's had a chance to get all their questions to the applicant addressed. Commissioner George.
I'm fine, thank you.
Commissioner Bazat.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Peroka.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Nothing more.
And Commissioner McDonald.
Nothing more.
Thank you. And I know that we've already mentioned some of the public testimony we received that via staff in the forms of emails and letters, and that's all been distributed to the commissioners. Are there any members of the staff that are, or not staff, any members of the public that are present on this call to
Well, I'm sorry, Chair. I did want to. We mentioned Kurt Schwentenberg's letter, and I'm sorry if I am mispronouncing Kurt's name. But we also had the email from Ken Peterson, who was in support of Kurt's letter as well, that I sent out earlier today. So those were the two. Those are the two letters of testimony we received.
Right. Okay. So with that, are there any members of the public that are on the line here today that would like to address this application? Okay, hearing none. Then I'll ask if there is a motion and a second for the application for the commissioners.
This is Commissioner George.
Yes, Commissioner George.
I move to adopt a draft resolution which approves construction of the new single-family residential structure with attached garage at 300 Ryan Avenue as per the findings of fact, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a second for that motion?
Commissioner Perotka, I second.
Thank you. And then I'll open it up for deliberation on that motion. And I'll do this going through the roll again. Commissioner George, anything you'd like to comment?
I have nothing further to say at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Bazat.
Yes, I echo the concerns that were put forward in the questions to staff earlier. I still feel that it's an attempt at replication rather than new design that would be a blend of contemporary and historical. The sections, regarding don't do faux historicism are pretty strong within the Secretary of Interior's standards. And to me, that building really reads as that. And even though it's not much taller, it certainly, looking at the footprint and the massing itself of the house, I hear what staff is saying regarding the issue of having to look at the entire Irvine Park in context. But my sense of it even from the pre-application to the changes that were made, which essentially were really only to the windows, are still an attempt to reflect that house that was moved on to 35 Irvine Park rather than reflect its surroundings. And I recognize that the surrounding houses are contributing to the district, but I think that whatever goes into a block with those houses on it should have more of a sense of being compatible with those than with the single house of actual historic origin. Then it just that's not that's not the structure that should be viewed as the important one in this context. And so it's the faux historicism part of the design, and the some of the details, and as I say, the size and the massing, the sighting, it's set back. That's great. To have that more, excuse me, consistent setback will certainly make the streetscape much more visually appealing, but I have no doubt that it will stand out as a thing. And to me, what it will stand out as is an attempt to look old without being old. So I'm not in favor of approving the application for those reasons.
And sorry, Chair, point of order. This is George Gauze with staff. Commissioner Bazat, I respect your comments, but we got to make sure if we're going to make comments about faux historicism and things, that's not actually in Chapter 74 guidelines. If you're going to deny, we're going to have to pull actual.
It's in the technical brief on infill structures,
which is not part of Chapter 74.
So we have no recourse to the Secretary of Interior's technical briefs for a reason for denial.
We do not. I don't see how we can. We Chapter 74 is what the commission has purview over. I mean, we have to draw our findings from Chapter 74.
Chapter 74 in our ordinance,
yes,
rather than the standards on which the ordinance says our purview is based.
Well, the preservation briefs are the National Park Service's interpretation of the standards, not something that we've adopted.
Specifically.
Right.
So we would have to have those words in the ordinance in order to use what is a general context, pretext, and guideline for preservation architecture.
Yeah, we have to use what's spelled out in new construction for Irving Park, which is height and width and context and all of those guidelines. Those guidelines are a consideration.
My comments still stand as an objection, but a cause for denial would remain the massing itself and the larger structure itself, larger than, I mean, not considerably so, but will apparently be so. So, that there it is. And thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Commissioner Bazat. Commissioner Peroka, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
Yes, thank you. The commissioners and the applicant have stated many things very well, as well as the new way to approach this, the 3 points that we take under consideration to have more disciplined decisions. With new construction fill-in, the argument between high style and the introduction of the style and what's transitional does become very complicated. I remember one of the first projects presented to me when I joined the commission was the third review of a property on Dayton Avenue, and one or two of the commissioners actually wanted to go back to the second design that was reviewed. So the fill-in construction can be very complicated, and there's a lot involved. I have to say that I think that the proposal is not meets the guidelines. and is thoughtful and sensitive design that could be a lot less thoughtful and sensitive, and we might not. And at this time, I'm going to vote in favor of the application. I think it's pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Peroka. Commissioner Nelson, do you want to weigh in on anything?
Just a few words. I think as George has stated, well, we're governed by the ordinance. The ordinance makes clear that the context is Irvin Park generally, not Ryan Avenue. If the context were Ryan Avenue, you could make a good argument that this doesn't fit. But that's not the context, so I'm going to support the motion. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner McDonald.
Yes, hello again. I too think it probably meets the ordinance. There's a few tweaks that I'd like to see, a little bit more refinement in some of the detailing. And I'm not sure if that could be added just in general and coordinated with staff. But I think overall a positive vote is in order here.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McDonald. I'll just run through the roll call one more time to make sure.
And I'm sorry, Chair, I just wanted to point out for those that cannot see the screen, I did put up the Irving Park Chapter 74 new construction guidelines. It's item C in their chapter. And I did highlight a section there. I think it's getting to what Barb's talking to. And I quote, new construction should incorporate the general massing, rhythm, materials, and building elements of historic Irving Park structures and should be sensitive to the architectural style evidence in the park. So maybe that says it, maybe it doesn't. I can tell you with it does talk about in here the diversity of style within the district. And then we have massing, rhythm, and then the rest is the detail elements of what materials it should be. So sorry to interrupt in this, but I thought I would point that out.
Thank you, George. Okay, so then, with all that, I'm going to run through the roll at least one more time to make sure everybody's had a chance to respond to other people's comments or to add some new comments. So I'll start with Commissioner George.
I'm fine, thank you.
Commissioner Bazat.
Thank you, George. I had that in front of me at the time as well. I do have it up on my own screen. I believe that it just has to do with the sensitivity to the architectural styles, and I recognize the issue of there being diverse styles within the park, and all are contributing, which is in this case a bit of an anomaly, given that there's a couple of really radical different styles evident within the park, which is in part which makes it such a lovely district. And this just seemed to not reflect the styles in the context of that part of the neighborhood, but that's not specifically spelled out in the guidelines for Irvine Park. I do recognize that.
Thank you, Commissioner Bazat. Commissioner Peroka, anything further?
Yeah, and I also just want to say that the letters from the neighbors, from Ken Peterson and Connie Lewis and others, that I did read them, that I think their points were well made and articulate. So yes, the letters were influential, but I will support the application, the resolution overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Nothing more.
Commissioner McDonald?
I muted myself. No additional comments.
Okay, thank you. So I see, I see that Commissioner Bazat has some, I see your hand up there.
I heard somebody chuckle. No, I did want to echo Commissioner Perouka's comment. I was thinking about this today, that number one, we got comments. They were clearly sent in time to give us a chance to review them in detail, because Commissioner Schickenberg's comments were pretty long, and it took some going back and forth from his letter to the plans, to the letter, and to the plans. But I just wish more people would do this in their neighborhoods. So thanks to those folks.
Thank you. One more call for any other discussion on this application among the commissioners. Hearing none, then I will call for a vote on the application. So Commissioner George.
I vote yes.
Commissioner Bazat.
I vote no.
Commissioner Perouka.
Sorry, point of order. We need a reason, Commissioner Bazat.
I would reflect, what is that? Paragraph C. In fact, the line that you have highlighted of the staff comments, I would not just the line that you've highlighted, but the sentence above it.
So the last two sentences. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. I knew there was a way to say that.
Commissioner Perouka.
I vote in favor.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yes.
And Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
And that motion, therefore, is passed. So thank you, everyone. And then Mr. O'Malley and Mr. Sharkey, I think staff will be in contact with you as sort of what the next steps are. But thank you for all your hard work, and we'll look forward to seeing what comes up there in that address in the coming months.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys, and we'll be seeing you soon. We got a couple more projects on that street, and we'll keep plugging along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
This is Commissioner Bazat. I so move with a request to have a quick word with staff post adjournment. It has nothing to do with this meeting.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Commissioner Perouka, are you seconding that motion?
I actually have a question too to bring up before we adjourn.
Okay.
Just a quick question.
Well, then now's the time.
Okay. George,
Yes.
I was noticing with the Celeste Hotel on Exchange Street that when they did the renovation and had the opening, they have left a pot in front of the iconic gold wreath on the level of the, I guess it's a piano nobles. And I'm wondering if there's any way to contact them to just say, that plant was put in front of the gold wreath to clean the sidewalk a few years before the restoration. You might just want to take it and put it back in its original spot. Is there any way to contact them to let them know of the original placement?
I can. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Because that gold wreath would really pop out and make that property even more visible, walking by, driving by, and the light rail.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks a lot, George.
Thanks. Good note.
Okay, so I'm looking for a second on the motion to adjourn, which is not usually so hard to get.
This is Nelson. I second.
Okay. Anybody opposed to the motion for adjournment?
No.
If not, we are adjourned.
Thanks. No, George, I just want